Hello, I'm being joined by Amanda Beth of Amanda Beth Healing and the Iowa Salt Pod today. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thanks for
Uh,
having me. Appreciate it.
no, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and coming on. I definitely love talking about this stuff as far as health and wellness goes. And it's very interesting seeing, because I've talked to a lot of people, and it's interesting how different everybody is and the things they provide, right? I've actually learned a lot of things that I didn't even know. And I thought I knew quite a bit about this space, but I learned that I don't. But can you share a bit about your role and how it fits in the bigger picture at Amanda Beth Healing?
Sure. So I have a really, really unique background. I started out as an EMT straight out of high school. I actually had to wait on my birthday to get my certification because I graduated too early. And then I went on and I was a social worker for several years before entering into the sign and graphic design business. And then I found flotation. So the saltwater flow, sensory deprivation, whatever you want to call it, and that was my focus. And I did that to address my own physical care. It was having all of the stuff that went along with fibromyalgia. And I just didn't really have a lot of quality of life. And so I found flotation and said, man, this doesn't make me feel this good. I need to bring this to Southeast Iowa. And that's what I did. And I opened up the Iowa Salt Pod nearly 10 years ago. And then going through all of the changes and everything. And with the pandemic hitting, it really hit my business hard. And my business is uniquely located inside the practice of an osteopathic family practice. And so in addition to running my salt pot, I was also helping with her office. And so being medical staff, I was medical staff there. I served mostly as office manager, but I also did nursing duties and things like that as well. And then coming through the pandemic, my salt business just didn't take back off like I thought it should. And so I started looking at what could I do differently and how would I redo do my business a bit differently. And that's when I went through my own healing with an amazing mentor and coach who used mostly theta healing. And my transformation and my healing there was so incredible. I took all the coursework and learned how to better utilize my intuition and help people with theta healing. And then from there, with the side effects that I had going through different vaccinations and things, I ended up finding homeopathy. And so I took that classwork, have that certification, and I also function as a homeopathic educator here. That's what I do.
That's quite the story of a huge shift, right?
Yeah, big shift, big shift.
Did so you experienced some negative impact from a vaccination or vaccinations?
Yeah, I had the side effect and it the everywhere that clothing touched my body, I ended up with a string of hives. If I laid in bed and if there was a wrinkle in my sheets or blankets, I had a streak of hives anywhere there was any pressure point, and it could be that little. And the hives were just everywhere. It made my life very miserable. And so I stumbled into some homeopathy and then learning how to take my own remedies and the things that I did. It's like, well, this is awesome. We've got to share this. And so became certified there as well so that we can look at what is it that people are in need of. And with homeopathy, the part that I really, really love is that it works on what your individual symptoms are, not necessarily looking at what your diagnosis has been. Because a
Uh,
diagnosis, and having had several of them myself over my lifetime, it doesn't always address what the real problem is for me. So, we both might experience the flu, and what medications and things work for you may not work for me.
mm,
And homeopathy really gives us that freedom to look at, what time of day is your fever, what makes it better, what makes it worse, and to specialize because there's like over 6,000 different homeopathic remedies, and knowing how to select that remedy for each person to help them to heal and to go on and thrive without taxing their system.
right. Yes, that's actually something I said for years about the whole, like Grey's Anatomy model that medical system follows, right? Of the kind of cookie cutter approach of this is how we treat everybody. And like you said, everybody's different in how people respond. I mean, just like the vaccination, right? Some people got the vaccination and they didn't have an immediate response, whether or not they're still having a response that they don't know about. That's, another thing. But, and then I have family, like close family that ended up in the hospital from after they got vaccinated, right? So yeah. So I understand everybody's different.
Yeah, you
So,
got to respect and honor that, and I think that that's the first thing that I think a lot of individuals need to take control of their own health and their own health care and pay attention. Does this work? Does that work? And as a mom, my kiddos, one kid, she'd get a fever, it was no big deal. She would get over it. The other kiddo, she would go from happy-go-lucky to, a fever of 105. There's different peoples, and how each of those children were treated was what worked for them, not what worked for everybody else.
well, and I don't like how, like, for example, I can't remember what year it was. I think it was in the 60s. The CIA coined the term conspiracy theorist in order to discredit people. Did you
Mhm.
know that was his whole purpose, that term was to discredit people. But so, for example, where I'm leading with this is before I had my daughter, she's 19 now. I was already really interested in naturopath approaches and holistic medicine. And I knew that I was going to be facing the decision of what to do with vaccines with my kid, and was doing a ton of research and decided to not vaccinate. And so my daughter's 19 and hasn't been vaccinated, vaccines. And that's just a choice that I decided to make. I was worried. I was more worried about going down the path of vaccinations than not. And so, but then, you get accused of all these things and call those all these things. Today, this morning, actually, from a social media post I was commenting on of a friend's, they called me an idiot, right? And I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm the idiot apparently, and they haven't done any research like what I'm talking about. So,
Well, and I think that that's kind of that's the crux. They are only calling you an idiot because they have not done that research. And having two daughters and having to make those parental decisions about vaccines. And if I knew today, if I knew then what I know today, I probably would have made very different decisions. And my girls are 10 years apart. So my oldest daughter did get the gosh, I can't even think of it. I can't remember it. Anyway, she got that vaccine as an older teenager. And when my younger daughter came along, I completely allowed her to make that decision. Gardasil, that's what it is. The
oh, I was going to ask
Gardasil.
if it was the HPV.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Gardasil one. And it was really scary because at the time the oldest got it, she was one of the first groups in our community that got it. And yet some of her peers were having really negative responses to it, but she got hers before they did. And so we didn't have that. And so I think that, educating yourself and understanding. And from my understanding of vaccines now, especially with the homeopathic view of it, people who are at risk are the other children who don't get vaccinated, and they don't get vaccinated because their immune systems won't allow them to. And so if my child came in with that, it would infect that child. But to say that I have to vaccinate my child because you can't vaccinate yours, I think is a really hard push on things. I can see both sides of it, and I've been blessed that I didn't have to make my decisions based on that. But that's where we're at. And when we look at the whole going back to Louis Pasteur, he's the one that invented that very first vaccine. And there's a lot of money to be made in vaccinating individuals because the other theory on the table, and I can't think of the name right now, he was the exact same time. And he said, you know what, if you are healthy, you don't need a vaccination. So follow a path of a good diet, balanced food and oxygen and, exercise. A healthy person does not become sick.
I know who you're talking about. It's like Camp or Boo.
It's a unique name.
But he was basically like the fishbowl model, right? Like, oh, Louis Pasteur was focused on, well, you put medicine in the fishbowl, and he was like, no, you clean the fishbowl, right? Like you change the water and
Yeah, but there's no money to be made in telling people to be healthy and take care of
right.
themselves. There isn't money to be made, but there's a lot of money to be made in pharmaceutical stuff.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I can't remember saying boot camp or something like that, but
We'll have to look it up and put it in the
yeah.
show notes.
But and it was a hard decision for me because as a parent, right, you hope that you're making the right decision, right? You want to make the right decision, and you're doing all this research, and then that's what critical thinking is, right? You take in all the information, and then you're making a decision based off all on both sides, right? You're taking in pro-vaccine and not vaccinating, and then making a decision, and that's what I did, and just hoped that I was making a good decision, right? Because it's not an easy one because you want the best for your kid.
Well, and I think one of the other things that, like working in the medical office and working full time in a medical office during the pandemic, and did we advise people to get it or not get it? It's like, you do what your conscience leads you to. We're not going to tell you how to live your life. And I know that that is not a common stance in a medical practice. I mean, because there were a lot of practices, if you didn't get it, you couldn't come in their office. And then I know, like after I became more involved in homeopathy, there's some people in the homeopathic realm that if you did get vaccinated, you can't come around them because there's vax shedding. You know,
Hmm.
there's all kinds of things. And I think that when there's a rush to do anything, when there's pressure to do anything, and you feel like you don't have the time to make your own decision, that alone should help you make your decision.
I agree. I agree. It's been fascinating and disappointing to see and I think colleges are pushing this too, as far as they don't want people to be critical thinkers, and they don't want them. They just want to listen, right, and just do what we say, and we do. A lot of us are indoctrinated from childhood, even just to have like blind faith in doctors, for example,
Mhm.
and they're just a person, right? Like it's
Well, yeah,
so.
they're a person, and then if you have a doctor who comes in and they have a script and they're not looking at you as an individual. How
Mhm.
did you handle this medication? And I just recently had a friend go through a procedure and it didn't turn out any way that I mean it wasn't horrific, but like just the medications that they used to sedate them, they didn't take enough history to say, how does your body metabolize this?
Mhm.
What do you do with this type of medicine? They just walked in and when it didn't work, they just pushed through and it's like that's so
Ugh.
wrong. That's so wrong. And that's where you gotta stand up and you have to be your own best advocate. And as parents, we have to advocate for our kids. And when I mean, they wanna do these injections when they're just teeny tiny babies, and I guess if someone is really adamant that their child should have a vaccination, I can support you through that. But let's be more caring about it. If you take a healthy person and you beat them up 5 or 6 times, they're not going to take it as well as if you give them one punch at a time. Let the body adapt to it. Don't overwhelm them and make them sick. When you tell me that I got to give my kid Tylenol before I even walk into your office to counteract what you're about to do to them, that
Right.
concerns me.
Right. Well, then there's the whole question of, like, my mom had given me a bunch of stuff back to me, like from like a baby book and things. And anyway, my vaccine record, like I had three vaccinations, and there's over 70 now, right? Like given to kids, like three. I had three. I'm 48, and so just in that time, that's how much it's changed and how much and not only that, but all these ingredients and new science, or what they're calling new science, and that's the other topic is it's changed so much from what it originally was, a vaccine.
Absolutely. And here in Southeast Iowa, we have a very large Amish community, and the Amish community goes in waves. There was a whooping cough outbreak, and whooping cough is also known as a 100-day cough. If you do nothing to treat it and you don't have you're going to cough for 100 days before it goes away. But it was interesting then to talk with the families and to see. And at that point in time, when that happened, I could clearly see a phase where any children who were under the age of 8 had not had any vaccination, and the children that were between the ages of 8 and 15 had all had vaccinations. But it's interesting to see an entire community that, for the most part, does not vaccinate. And they do not do a lot of what the English culture does. And there are pretty darn healthy folks out there that working hard and doing all the things. So there's a large pool of people that we could easily and readily see that don't participate in everything fully that are healthy.
Right. Yes. And I guess not to take up a ton of time on this on this subject,
We could talk all day.
but I think it is important. It's important, and one of the things I looked at when I was originally trying to decide is if you look at the statistics, disease and transmission of viruses, it was on the major decline before vaccines were introduced, right? And it was because of things like, microorganism awareness, right? Like them knowing that these exist, and, hand washing and potable water and plumbing and all these things that were being introduced at the same time that were the reason that disease was shooting down before it even was available to people. But if you obviously dig into all that research, you would, people would find that out, but most people don't. They just do what they're told to do. So,
Sheepling through the
yeah.
world. Yes.
And so obviously that wasn't, 20 years ago when I was doing that research and could find it all then. And I think back then there wasn't such a political, I, it didn't, I don't know. I don't even know if the term anti-vax was being used at that time. You know what I mean? Maybe it was. I don't know, but it's definitely gotten a lot bigger. And luckily, our doctor, my daughter's doctor, was respectful of whatever decision we
Hmm.
made, and he didn't try to push anything on us. But it's a very interesting topic, and I guess I wish more people would do research.
Yeah, there's plenty of research out there. First of all, you have to be willing to take the time and to learn and to
Yeah,
invest in yourself.
and it's about everything or anything you're talking about. Like even just to have, I guess, an opinion or a perspective on something, I think research is necessary. But a lot of people don't want to do research and they don't want to spend time. But I enjoy it. So I guess obviously when you enjoy it and you enjoy learning, then
Well,
it's
and I think that it has to be something that is important to them.
right.
I'm going to throw it out there. There's no hesitation in researching what the best vehicle is, or what the
Mhm.
best cell phone is, or what the best community to live in is. So it's prioritizing your health. You get one body. You get one set of all of this stuff. You could trade in cell phones in a couple of months. You can't
Right.
trade in your body. You can't trade in your health. And so I would just hope that people would become more respectful of their own health and do that research and don't rely on any one person. You know, you wouldn't rely on one source for anything. And now with the internet being so readily available, I know there's a couple other circles that I'm in, and you got to fact check things. You got to check and get a consensus and look at so many things, because so many things, anyone can put the information out there. And did you do your fact checking? Did you do your due diligence? Does that person have the authority to give you that opinion? Or where are they basing it on? What do they know? For me, I've grown up here in the Midwest, and I see, this is what I see. This is my exposure.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a I think maybe a podcast topic in its own. Of so as far as your business goes, what does a typical day look like for you?
Blending both of the businesses together. So it looks at checking the water balance for the float center, making sure that my pod is safe. The water balance being, what is the pH, the sanitation, the disinfecting, how we use that, and making sure everything is there. The water temperature is just perfect. We've done everything we can to make sure that the room is safe and clean and sterile, but still being friendly and inviting with that. Looking at, so on the more holistic side, following up with any clients, making sure that where they are in their state, what is the next step for them, and being available to them to follow up with if they're having responses to the remedies that they've been given, if they need something else or something different. So being available to them for that. And then in the intuitive healing area, being available, holding that container for individuals so that, as long as they're working with me, I hold that container, and being receptive to times that they would need something. Every once in a while, there's a client that, doesn't really want to reach out to you in crisis, but they're in crisis. And so just sending that friendly reminder of, hey, if there's anything else we can do, sending a little bit more unconditional love today, and then honoring the times that people do schedule with me. Right now, I'm working on another book as well. So just kind of doing all the things.
Yeah, sound busy.
just a little bit.
Books.
It can be, but I think when you're authentic and it's coming from your heart and you're sharing what is really important. My first book was more of a memoir, and so that one was I made use of some downtime. I had had a hip replacement, and so I made use of that downtime to do those final revisions and get that done. And now I've known there was another book calling. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And so now it's kind of talking about that whole how I represent my business. Telling people that I'm an intuitive healer doesn't really mean a whole lot to them. But when you put other terms to it and you can liken that, doing data healing is very much like, but a bit different than Reiki healing, it's energetic healing. So pouring some more information so that people can better understand just exactly what it is without saying, I'm a psychic. They can relate to that, but there's also that positive and negative and what experiences they have. Just being there to help people through that next decision in their life, deciding, helping them to figure out what path they're on and what is important to follow and not important. So it's a lot of coaching
Right.
there as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, what major shifts are you seeing in your industry right now?
In the float industry, it continues, and I think and the float and homeopathy, both things. Everyone is mandated to carry health insurance, be a card-carrying member for health insurance of some sort, and so they feel what I'm seeing is people feel they're invested in their health insurance, and that if anything is good for them, their health insurance should be paying for it. Worked in the medical office, I've seen where health insurance doesn't always pay for what is in the patient's best interest. And so being that patient advocate and helping them to understand the benefits of the recommendations. And the osteopath that I worked for, I mean, osteopathic doctors are generally more holistic based, but looking at what is in your long-term best interest. And someone like if an antibiotic were warranted and the insurance company says we're not paying for an antibiotic and they're like, oh, my insurance didn't pay for it, I can't have it. It's like, no, your insurance just said you're not going to pay for it. They're not going to pay for it. You'll have to pay for it out of your pocket. Did you ask the next question of how much was that so that you can be compliant and do it? And it's like, if you're not going to follow through with the recommendations, why would you go through with the testing? And then when we come to my business, and if your insurance is not going to pay for you to float, to treat your concussion, to treat your PTSD or any of the other physical chronic pain things that you have, you don't want to pay for it yourself, even though it's going to give you the longer interest. The Float Research Collective has done all kinds of sanctioned studies that show that flotation, the positive effects of flotation on chronic pain, last 24 to 48 hours from each single float, where those are the same people who are taking benzodiazepines and opiates to deal with their chronic pain. And each one of those pill dosings only lasts them 4 to 6 hours. In my mind, I think that's a pretty easy thing that I would want to go float, not put these chemicals through my body and tax my liver and my kidneys and my whole system, especially when it leaves you feeling a little foggy and you can't drive safely and you can't do all these other things. So I think that a lot of it is what's going to help me and helping people to understand what the benefits of everything are and what their choices are. So I feel I do a lot of education there.
Mhm.
And we at my float center and most float centers that I'm aware of, we all offer a chronic pain float package. So it's a deeply discounted price. And so I say to a lot of people, I said, but you would go to your doctor for this, right? Yeah. And if you went to your doctor, what would your copay be? And copays are, I have seen anywhere from $30 to $70. If you would have to pay, if your insurance covered a float with me, you would have to pay $30 to $70 copay to float. And my package price for that is less than that. So it's not going to
Right.
cost you any more out of pocket to pay for something that's going to help you. And so I think that getting that mindset around doing things to help yourself, whether or not your insurance is backing it, getting you to invest in yourself in your own care, because with flotation, you can manage your chronic pain and you can get rid of many of the medications that you're on.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's just again, it's just part of their business model, right? To push
Mhm.
to push their own agendas and things that they want people to do for as far as treatments go. But as far as those shifts that you were just describing, how do you think that's impacted your business or growth strategy?
It's made it difficult. I think that the whole economic situation right now, just people looking at what is it that they're willing to invest in and not necessarily looking at the investment that they make in themselves and seeing that as a value. Many years, for example, floating was looked at as a luxury to rest and to relax, but it's worth so much more. And so changing that floating is not necessarily a spa day, but it's more of a nervous system reset. It allows your brain to reset, it allows you to have better focus, better sleep, better, you're going to perform better at your job and your daily activities by taking this break of time. And while you might fall asleep in the float pod, your brain is actually healing and mending and allowing you better concentration. So the time in the float pod is going to give you back your time 3 to 4 fold versus going home and taking a nap.
All
So
right.
just kind of it's a lot of education, and I think that that's the shift in the mindset of encouraging people to do the research, find out what works for you and what your body needs to help you have a level of homeostasis and a level of health that you want to live with.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It's always interesting hearing this from, obviously I'm not in the same space that you are. So it's interesting. It's like every
I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So as far as from a now now this is from more of a business aspect. What do you find is working well for you right now and what's been frustrating?
Oh, goodness. I think one of the things that works well in a small town business is word of mouth. And I think that that is incredibly important. Don't know. I mean, there's it's not crowdsourcing. That's not the right word, but doing peer reviews, getting individuals to do the Google reviews because everyone wants to see what everybody else thought. So not necessarily package deal and couponing. I see those as being detriments to businesses. The Groupon mentality, tried that, learned that. And with Groupon, people can purchase another one in 90 days. When you start putting out coupons, people are waiting for your next coupon to come out. They won't do services again until they can have another coupon. And for me, what I have found and in working with other float centers and other businesses, we want to reward your loyalty. And so for me, I offer a membership program. So members get it's like a $35 or 35% discount on their floats because they've committed to being a member. They've committed to taking care of themselves and they get to float at different times that are not part of the public schedule. They can float longer times. And so for me, my business model is to reward those who are loyal customers rather than I feel that coupon to get you in on a 50% discount on your first float feels like a bait and switch
Right.
to me. And so just looking at the automation, there's so much automation out there and how much of that automation I bring into my business because I really don't like getting an email every day from different businesses. And so finding what that sweet spot is for my customers and how I would like to be handled and how I would like to be reached and network with other business owners all over the world, and it's really interesting. It's like, "No, that's not how I'm gonna treat my people."
Yeah.
And so just being true to what I would like. What I would like to see other businesses do is how I'm going to treat my clients. I'm
Hmm.
not going to follow you have to have, a whole email sequence and, 12 to 15 emails to nurture them into what no,
Right.
I can't do that.
Which metrics would you say are you most focused on improving?
I want client outcome to be the most important thing. I want anyone who works with me to know that they are my primary focus at the time while they are working with me. I want their outcome to be as positive and the best that it possibly can for them. And if customer service is just incredibly important to me, being able to receive any information that's, fun to get as a business owner and to be able to understand where that person is coming from. And that doesn't mean, oh, you said something bad, I'm going to give you a free float. It's like going to the pizza joint and saying, we put my toppings in the wrong order, I want a free pizza. It's about being able to understand where they're coming from and to help them through that process. And so I think one of the things that's most important to me in that customer service part is to help people understand what they've signed up for, what the limitations of what I can do either through floating, through intuitive healing, or even homeopathy. Where are the limitations and what do they need to understand about each thing? I want people to have that knowledge as they go into it. And if they want research ideas, I can certainly send them to several websites if they want to do more research.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's you definitely have great answers. It's um no, it's all not everybody goes into so much detail, so it's interesting to hear all
Well, and I
the
know
details.
when we first started talking about this, you were talking about, being um more a bigger business.
Mhm.
My business is me, myself, and I do have a VA that helps handle the social media part because that is not my favorite part.
Right.
And so helping, and I think that's really important for all business owners to understand the parts of the business that you like and the parts you don't like. Do everything you can to delegate those out because if it's a part of your business you don't like, you're not going to thrive at it. You're not going to do well. And it's going to come out in your presentation. Doing podcasts and talking about what I like doing, I love to do that. If I didn't enjoy it or wasn't feeling it, I would have said, "Nah, no thanks. No thanks. Here's my article.
Right.
Here's my latest blog. You check it out that way." But just being there, being available to answer those questions, I think is really important.
Right. I agree.
And I look at when staffing things. When you hire staff, they need to be somebody that is going to do the job you're hiring them for. You don't have to like them. You're not taking them home with you and feeding them dinner. They have a job to do. And so being able to have that staff retention. And I know one of the problems that I saw in a sole practitioner office is they couldn't compete with wages that the other larger group practices can do. They can absorb more of that. They have more access to federal funding that offsets a lot of that. And so knowing what your limitations are and what you can do in place of that. And really small offices, they can't provide that health insurance coverage. So
Right.
that's one benefit that you're down that the bigger places can offer. So just kind of knowing what your people are. And I think that the authenticity, that's my word of the year. Being authentic. Don't try to be something that you're not. Be as honest as you can be and understand people. Meet them where they're at. See what it is they need. If someone comes to me with something that they think that floating's going to help, and if it's not something that's going to help them, I'm going to tell them. I'm not going to just sell them a float and say, "Oh, well, gee, gosh, sorry that didn't work."
Right.
I want everybody to have a great experience.
No, yeah, I think I mean, that's important for every business. Where do you want to be in 6 or 12 months from now?
Oh, 6 or 12 months from now. I would love to be doing more podcasts. I would love to have another best-selling book published, and my schedules to just be really full, that I'm able to do the energetic healing, the float center. One of the best parts of the float center is I get to float, and that's how I have weaned myself off all of my prescriptions and things is because I'm able to do the floating and to take better care of myself. So I would say it's a full calendar with a little more freedom to do the other things I love to do.
Yeah, that would be perfect for all of
Now and
us, I think.
freedom.
If you could solve one major challenge today in your business, what would it be?
I think it's the outreach that I have to clients that would be aligned to being in my services. So having that outreach, I think, is one of the most difficult things that I have. Doing large social media campaigns, the advertising budget that needs to be there to reach further is can be horrendous and
Mhm.
very prohibitive. So looking at other ways that we can increase that reach, such as podcasts like yours.
Right. No, yeah, great. That's I mean, I know I agree with everything you've been saying, but it's yeah, I think that's a great response. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing everything. I think that I think another podcast in the future would be good because I think there's a lot of other stuff It's hard with some of these because there's a lot of topics that we can talk about for a long time, right? And but I do really appreciate it, and it would be great to talk to you again in the future if you're willing to.
Oh, sure, sure. Because yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things nested in what we tried to cover today that we could just go and
Oh yes.
yeah. And I've had a lot of different life experiences and careers, and I've, met a lot of amazing people along the way. And I just find that in in every career that I've had, the volunteer work, all the things they've done comes down to coaching people through how to get through this. What are your goals? What are you establishing? And how can I help you to stay on track and get where you want to go? It's not about me. I've had my share of things, and me helping other people is just one of the greatest gifts that I feel I can have.
That's great. I think that's a great outlook. Well, again, I thank you, and I hope you have a great day, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for including me in your podcast, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Yes, I do as well.